My absolutely favorite thing about creating a channel and tirelessly shilling it to you beautiful people, subscribe and like this by the way, is the discovery of new movies that I can just sit down and lose myself in for a handful of minutes on some random night. Especially when the movie's been sitting there for decades just waiting for me to dig into it. Like 1981's Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, for example. Let's talk about that one. Welcome back to Aging Gracefully, and this movie starts off with jarring intro music that gets us going here, with the backdrop being a small little dirt town out in the country, which I can appreciate because I grew up in Zionsville, North Carolina, and you should Google that because that's exactly what it is. I can appreciate that a lot more now than I did when I was 8 years old, but in a field, in this country, in this town, sits a little girl with a much older, grinning man named Bubba. And right away we can see that Bubba appears to be handicapped. Now, Mary Lee is the name of the little girl, and she chides Bubba about holding onto a flower too tight and crushing it. Was this foreshadowing? Because I know nothing about this movie at this point. I'm going into it blind. And it feels like a little bit of an homage to Frankenstein, but they're making leis out of flowers, and the little girl wants to give him a kiss, but he says no. He says absolutely not. She says it's customary with the flowers, and she winds up insisting. It doesn't feel like this is a good idea. I don't know where we're headed, but I'm a little uneasy by it. And then we notice a guy in a postal uniform with a set of binoculars watching from a distance. Now, I recognize this guy right away as an asshole in every movie he's ever been in. So right off the bat, I know he's probably going to be a bad guy here. Now, his name's Otis, and he's played by Charles Durning. And you see right away that he would love any and every opportunity to mess with Bubba. He's not very quiet about it. He's very vocal. And he rallies a friend of his named Harless, who is working on one of those brush machines, to go and find out what's going on. Let's look into this because Bubba's up to something. Now, initially, Harless wants to step in and tell Bubba to stay away from that little girl before something bad happens. But then Otis would rather actually wait until something serious actually happens, which I thought was super dark. I mean, was he hoping that the little girl would get hurt somehow and then they would do something about Bubba, who they feel like is an evil guy or is untrustworthy because of his handicaps or his difficulties that he's going through? But Otis and his friends essentially get their wish because Bubba knows, he's smart enough to know what he can and what he can't do. And Mary Lee, being a child, she doesn't understand all that just yet. And she sneaks into a backyard, and the backyard contains some fountains. She's very impressed by these fountains that they have in this yard, and she winds up sneaking into it so she can get a closer look, and she's confronted by one hell of a mean guard dog, and your heart just sinks because you never want to see something bad happen to a little kid, and it does not look good at this point. Now, she screams out for Bubba. Bubba's watching helplessly. He can't get through the opening in the fence where she got through because he's a bigger guy. And he winds up breaking through the fence, though, to lunge towards the little girl. Now, the way you're led to believe it from that point on, he's carrying this limp body of this little girl, Mary Lee, back to her home to give to her mother as he sobs uncontrollably. So in the moment, you're thinking this little girl has died. And you know how this whole thing's about to play out. Now, Otis is almost pleased by this development. I mean, he's got everything but a smile smeared across his face, and he rounds up all his buddies. They wind up arming themselves. They get their dogs out to hunt this guy, and then you see Bubba exhausted trying to get home to his mother. Now, he gets there, and your heart breaks for him because he thinks this little girl, his only friend in the world, has died. And he also knows what's about to happen to him because of it. So gets to his mom, he's sobbing, right? And she tells him, let's play the hiding game. Now, this makes the whole situation that much sadder because the fact that they have to have some sort of a hiding protocol in place because the townspeople blame him for everything or have blamed him for things in the past just because he's different, it really, really bums you out. So once the mother thinks that Bubba is safely tucked away, when the four men who are armed and have dogs show up at her front door. She tells them, beat feet out of here. My son's not here. I want you off my property. Now, it's at this point these men allude to having chased Bubba before, and they feel better about their chances now because they've got dogs. And then the dogs get a few hundred yards away, out into a field, start to lose their mind over a scarecrow. The guys at first don't think anything of it, and then when Otis gets closer, he realizes that hiding inside of that scarecrow is Bubba. And you see Bubba's face, and he's trembling. He starts to tremble. He starts to breathe heavy. The guys take a step back from the scarecrow, give him no opportunity to turn himself in, and they wind up opening fire on the scarecrow, killing Bubba, all before a radio call comes in and says, hey, guess what? The little girl's okay. It turns out Bubba saved her life from that pissed off dog. Holy hell, right? So now the three guys, along with Otis, they look on worried, right? Otis himself, though, he's got a plan. He takes a pitchfork, puts it in Bubba's arms, and they can claim self-defense, which is what they do. Now, there's a trial, and Otis lies through his teeth on the stand about every bit of it. Judge winds up leaning into his story, and it's sort of the good old boy bullshit. They get off. They're found not guilty. They get a round of congratulations as they exit the courtroom, pats on the back, and then you see them at a bar later on laughing their asses off. And it's just an easy group of people to absolutely hate. Then we see this little girl's mother fretting over telling Mary Lee about Bubba. Heavy winds are blowing in through Mary Lee's window, and the little girl somehow thinks it's Bubba. Now, in the middle of the night, she winds up walking all the way to Bubba's house. She sneaks into Bubba's house. She's looking around, trying to find her friend. Ultimately, she winds up finding Bubba's mom and explains that Bubba is gone now. And he's gone somewhere where the people can't hurt him anymore. Again, such a sad thing, right? It's just the way she had to frame what this guy's life has been up until this point. It just really makes you sad for him. Mary Lee, though, she's almost super creepy about her certainty that Bubba isn't quite gone. She openly says he's still here. When we get to the Harless' house the very next morning, we get one of those really well done, very simple scenes where the wife notices something out in the field, asks her husband, honey, have you been planting? Harless is busy working on his machine. He says, of course I haven't been planting. It's not the season yet. And then he looks up and he sees a scarecrow out in his field that was never there before. Freaks him out, blames it on his friends, storms into, I believe it's a bar, blaming his buddies, says no one better to kick around now that Bubba's not here. Now they swear innocence. They wind up meeting with Otis, and they all end up assuming that the DA, the district attorney that they beat in court on this case, is up to it because the DA swore he's going to catch them. He knows what they did. He's going to wind up catching them for it. Now, Otis, in his infinite wisdom, tells them to stay separated. Don't be lumped in together. Don't be seen together. This is great because it helps them get picked off one by one throughout the course of the film. Now, Harless gets home and the scarecrow is gone. And then he winds up going out to the barn because his brush machine gets started up. Turns it off, goes to check it out, and winds up on the second level of the barn before the machine comes back on, and Harless winds up falling into the brush machine. Now, the other two goofs run to Otis, and Otis goes to Bubba's mother to see if this is her. Otis is like, listen, we didn't have anything to do with your son. Bullshit, right? But he's basically checking to see what the likelihood is of Bubba's mother being able to take out revenge. Is this woman capable of doing something like this? So then the woman, Bubba's mother, winds up accusing Otis of looking at that little girl inappropriately. And that was the source for all of his hatred towards Bubba, is because Otis had a thing for this little girl. And that's one of those yikes moments, bro. Ew. But from that point on, you kind of see it in Otis's eyes when he's looking at this girl. And it's really, really unsettling. Philby is one of the other characters that hunted down Bubba, and he winds up seeing the Scarecrow show up at his place. Now, the other two then wind up finding Otis at the Halloween party he's trolling around, and they tell him that he needs to fix this situation or they're going to the cops. No questions asked. They're going to the cops and talking about what happened. Now, Otis is at this Halloween party because he's watching Mary Lee again, and he's very creepy about it. He winds up approaching Mary Lee, hoping that Mary Lee will tell him what Bubba's mom has been up to. And Mary Lee then tells Otis, I know what you did to Bubba because Bubba told me what you did to him. And she winds up walking away. Now it's at this point, Otis is convinced that Bubba's mother's responsible for this. And he breaks into her house later that night, threatens her while she's sitting in front of an open fire, knock it off or else. Now, sadly, we lose Bubba's mom in this scene because her heart gives out based upon the intensity of this confrontation. And Otis winds up turning the gas up in the place so it can look like an accident. Now, it's a really nice scare we get here before he does that of the squealing of the teapot. And Otis is just shell-shocked at this point. You know, he took a small moment with Bubba out in that field and made it something so much worse. And he's in it now. Because Philby wound up dying in a silo, after Bubba's mother was dead, Otis is now convinced it's Bubba. He can't explain how or why, but it's gotta be Bubba. So he convinces the fourth guy that helped him hunt Bubba, named Skeeter, because people down south, their name's Skeeter every once in a while. They end up digging up Bubba's grave to see if the body is still in the casket. Now, when he's there, when the body is still there, Skeeter's like, this is it. I'm done. 2 of my buddies are dead. I'm going to the cops. Now, Otis is able to convince Skeeter that they'll go to the cops together because Skeeter's dumb and Otis is manipulative. He says, just get back in there, close the casket door so we can cover this back up with dirt, and then we'll go to the cops. Once Skeeter's in the grave, Otis hits him with the shovel and buries him alive. He buries his friend alive. This is not a nice dude. And he's drinking and driving all the way home from burying his friend alive when he sees Mary Lee in the road in the middle of the night and he winds up chasing her down. He catches her, awfully rough with her. I wasn't very happy about that. But then the wind starts picking up, blowing again like it did when it blew into her window that night. So a little bit of foreshadowing earlier in the film. And it's a perfectly poetic ending how the whole thing ends. Now, this is a movie's 40 some odd years old. I'm still not a big fan of spoiling endings. I'm not going to spoil the ending here. But I gave this movie a 7.5 out of 10. It was very unexpected because it leans into trying to legitimately scare you. Even though it's vigilante justice, it still leans into these uncomfortable moments. Doesn't really rest on gore. There's not blood in this movie. I think the only blood you get is at the very end. Larry Drake is really good as Bubba here in this movie for the short amount of time that we have him on our screen. Now, immediately I thought he was going to be a bad guy when I saw that he was in this movie because I'm pretty sure he was Dr. Giggles, and I think he was in a movie called Darkman. I don't know too much about Darkman. I think Darkman himself is the good guy in that film, but I can't speak too much on that. But you feel for him, man. The hate this character gets because he's handicapped, it just breaks your heart. I thought he did a good job with this character in this movie, and this is one of those really solid horror films that you could sit down with and watch with kids, depending on their comfort level with being scared, their ability to handle fear. You know, there's no language, there's no sex, there's very minimal bloodshed. And I know what you're thinking. Those are usually all the best things about horror films. And those are the things that I love about horror films. But I think if you give this one a shot, you're not going to regret it. It's going to age gracefully for me. I'm going to watch this with my son to see what he thinks. That is going to do it for our Dark Knight of the Scarecrow rundown. If you dug it, if you didn't, let me know what you think. I like reading the comments. I appreciate the comments. If you want to like this video, I'd appreciate that too. Think about subscribing. We do this every once in a while when I'm able to come down here and do it because right now I'm a little gimpy. But my personal physical issues aside, I appreciate you guys very much. Thanks for checking out the channel. This is Aging Gracefully. I'm Matthew Essex. I'll see you on the other side.